Okay, this is just a follow-up lesson to the previous lesson talking about impression value to create depth and kind of to give us a head start in lighting. I keep this one pretty simple here, and I'm just going into sky figures and also foreground figures where you can kind of add depth within kind of a certain given space. So foregrounds, in other words, don't always have to be objects stamped in black. And what I've done is I've gone back to this one right here from the previous lesson and added in some kind of grayscale, lighter reads in the foreground just to kind of make the foreground area seem a little bit more kind of deep in terms of the space there, as well as, you know, things in the background aren't the only things that have to have that kind of dark and light kind of convention to convey depth. But anyways, in this lesson right here, I'll go into how to manipulate your skies and the difference between stamping out something kind of all monochromatically, in this case everything was stamped out in black, to utilizing your grayscale imageries. And when I say gray, it doesn't have to just be gray. It could be just some kind of more neutral color to push depth. So this one, very shallow depth right here, black imagery, black clouds. And this one right here, black land imagery and lighter clouds, probably more like a 70 to, I don't know, maybe a 30% gray in terms of the value of those sky cloud images. Okay, and this one is just one where I stamped it in two different versions of blue to create kind of a deeper space within this given composition, or skyscape as they might call it. Okay, so anyways, if you watch the video, I hope you enjoy it. Thanks as always for tuning into the channel. Okay, this is a follow-up, short one, to the previous lesson on impression value for depth and lighting. Okay, I'm just stamping this Lakeside Cove out in black right here. One of the things I didn't really go into was skies and things like clouds and whatnot. But just to show you that you can apply this to these kind of principles or concepts to just about anything. Here's the Cloud Cumulus right here, and I can fill in an entire sky with this cloud if I want to, okay? So let's just do that. Let's just go straight black, okay? Now, you can stamp this out in whatever color you want. If I stamped it out in a light blue or something like that, especially like a summer sky, maybe that would be almost too light. Salvia blue, something kind of in the lower value ranges, this wouldn't look so kind of tumultuous, you know, stormy like that, because the contrast wouldn't be there. It would look like a, you know, really nice, you know, very calm day with, you know, some cloud cumulus in there. I just stamped that upside down like that. And what we have is, we do have some depth here because these this tree line here is, it's a stronger solid shape than, you know, the stippling work of the cloud. But for the most part, things are, you know, the spatial difference between the two objects is not that extreme because of the values used. So let's do that again and use that concept of value to represent lighting and depth in here. Let's do this again. I'm just stamping this in black. Now I'm doing it in black because, you know, you can really see the difference in space and tone just by simply just using all black right here. But like I said, we'll do this with color down the line. Okay, so I'm stamping this in kind of more of a a blotted black, which would be give me some version of gray. Okay, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it's probably like a 70% black now, maybe. Okay, so now it's a little bit lighter, but the tree line stands out much more distinctly. Now, like I said, if I stamp this out in a blue or something like that, or in the same value but in a blue, these black trees would stand out even more because it wouldn't blend in. Okay, now I've stamped this out once, right? Well, this is the second impression. Okay, that's one I just did. I blotted it off here, so that's one impression, two impressions. Now let me show you what you can also do too. Let me go for a third impression, just using the same inking, okay? I can go up with something like that. Now I'll need to re-ink this again. I'll go 1, 2, okay? And then let's just, I'm kind of twirling this. I kind of like this type of look right here. And let me see, I'll re-ink this again. I'll go 1, 2, so it's much lighter on here. And we'll go for that third impression. I like doing things like that to make it look like kind of a hole, you know, in the sky, with, you know, where you can have light coming out of it. But these impressions up here are my third impression, where these ones are the second, okay? I could have done it the second for all of them, but, you know, just to get that variation up there, doesn't that cloud look a little bit farther back than this one, because this one is darker, okay? Now I can do the same type of thing, and like I said, down below if I want to, but let's keep the composition a little bit more simple, because I'll show you what we can do in this foreground as well. I forgot to do that in the last lesson, so let me go with a pretty firm impression like that, and then let's do a reflection down here, like so. Okay, just kind of filling in like that. Get up again, 1, 2, and I'll fill in down here. Okay, so we have some lighter reflections down here now, right? It's kind of like a mirror. But look at the difference between these two, okay? The clouds seem farther back in the distance than this one. Okay, now one of the things that's really easy enough to do, that you can also do for things like foregrounds. Okay, I'm grabbing my old scene that I just did down here in the previous lesson. Okay, we stamped our reeds out just in black. On this one, why don't we go black, okay, like so. Alright, that looks just fine to me, but let's go for a couple kind of lighter impressions, okay, go like this down here. I don't know, you can stamp it a few times. But I don't know, let me see if you can see this here. Maybe I shouldn't have stamped those clouds, but we have lighter reeds here in the foreground. So there's a black one, another one here. So it layers things without it looking overly busy, because some kind of recede a little bit. They get pushed back into the distance. Let's do the same thing. Let me take this one that I already stamped out here from the previous lesson, like I said. Let's go for a couple impressions like this. Okay. Before we'll take it into this. And then I get a little bit of a deeper bunch of grass here, okay? These reeds. See how there's some that are darker, and then there's some that are kind of more of like a 50% or less grayscale. So I didn't do any over here, but I did some over here. So that we get a more dimensional foreground that way. Okay. Let's see if I have a little bit of ink left on here still. Yeah, a little bit. I'm not trying to stamp directly over my previous ones. I'm skewing it a little bit so that it looks more kind of multi-dimensional. Okay. And then there you have it right there. So those kind of gray entries down there. And this works when you have kind of a little bit of a lighter area in which to stamp those lighter versions of that existing stamp. If there was something really dark in here, like a, I don't know, like a fisherman or so, I don't know, an animal, egret standing in the water, you wouldn't want to do, and if it was black, you wouldn't want to do these light versions of the reeds, otherwise the egret, you know, or the image that was dark would, you know, stand too forward in terms of the value of ink used. So the darker things tend to look a little bit closer to you. So you can put dark and light within a given space if the area behind it is light, like that. Okay. So playing around with values to create that depth right there. So we have inherent depth in the impressions themselves. Okay. Let's take a look at that cloud stamp again. Okay. Let's go with a color this time instead of just doing it in black, and you'll see what that can look like. This works really good if you have something like some clouds framing, let's say a cloud of sun or any of the sky figures. This looks really good by doing your clouds a little bit darker and your sky figure, whatever's in the middle here, kind of a lighter tone. I mean, it could be just a different tone too, and that'll stand out. Okay, not going with black here. Well, let's go with a couple different values of blue. Let's just go with a dark blue. This is an almost navy blue. This one's a Marvy one. Ooh, that one's really juicy. Let me wipe off a little bit of this ink around the top portion of it. I'm going, you know, pretty deep into it, like a ½ inch or so, maybe an inch. Okay, and that's because I know I'm going to be running in a lighter version of it in there. So you see that? We get that transitioning value, just like in the last lesson. Okay. Wipe it off with a dry paper towel. If we wipe it off with a wet paper towel, it removes everything. We won't get that transition. It'll just be a straight line where the ink has been removed, okay? So play around with your inks, you know. One of the nice things about inks and rubber stamps is that whatever color of ink you have, you can stamp something out as dark as or as light as you want using that existing ink by just using less ink of it, you know, less ink on your stamps. So in theory, you can have every color from this blue all the way to white in one pad, okay? It's not going to change the hue, but you can change the value of it. And often the intensity of it. You know, if you remove a lot of ink off of a very bright color, it's going to stamp more dull, or kind of give you the pastel version of it. Okay. Okay. I can almost go with another impression of it right there using the same color, but let's play around with a different color altogether. You know, different value of this hue, I should say. We're not going to change hue here. Okay, so there's something like that. You can see it's already kind of like receding, you know, where it gets lighter on the interior, and every impression of this, I just kind of stamped it with those billows facing to the inside of the scene, or I don't know, card, whatever. You could leave it like this. This would be a really dramatic card for some kind of quote saying in there, you know, so it really brings attention. It looks like the lighting is, or the quote would be kind of illuminating the piece, which is kind of fun. Okay, so that was kind of a darker blue. We can go with a lighter blue like this, or we can go with an even lighter one like this. It just depends how far back into the piece do we want this next cloud, the inner clouds, to seem. So it looks like we're kind of lying back on our back or something, looking up at the sky, and there's this opening in the sky, and it looks like it, you know, kind of has a deeper space to it. So let me wipe off my stamp. And this is a salvia blue. It's pretty light, okay? And do the same type of thing, except you're just doing it with a lighter color. Now this one I'm going all the way around because the back side of this will be going into the front side of that previous impression. I don't know how many spaces, how much space I'll have for the inner impressions, but probably about 2, I would say. Okay, see that transition right there? Doesn't that cloud look kind of farther back in the distance because it's lighter? Okay. And you notice you don't have to do any masking or anything like that. I mean, you certainly could if you want to, but the designs are designed very carefully with the idea of merging in mind, merging with itself, and multiple impressions, merging with their sibling designs, and merging with other companies' designs. My stamps work really good with kind of tonal, designs for the most part. Linear designs, they, it's kind of a little bit of a different thing. You might have to mask out the linear designs, which I try to avoid in terms of my own designing style. But okay, so kind of more of the navy blue, a little bit of a darker blue. With Marvy, it's just the number 3. It's just called blue. And then we have the salvia blue like this, but you can do this with any color scheme. Clouds do not have to be blue, which most people tend to associate with the sky. But there's sunset colors that you can use. I don't know, stormy clouds, unusual colors. Make it whatever color you want. Skies tend to kind of evoke certain types of emotional qualities, and I would say use whatever colors, in your sky that you're attracted to. It doesn't have to be something that we see every day. Sometimes the most dramatic skies are ones that are kind of the most unusual colors. So this side left a little opening right there, but I could stamp, another cloud in there if I wanted to. But for the most part, you have darker on the outside right here and lighter in the middle. You don't have to do it in this circular pattern. It could be just a bank of clouds like this, okay? Like that, rising from, the horizon like that, in multiple tones. So the multiple values are just, with the idea of kind of pushing space more. Not that everything has to have a deep space or whatever, but that's just a simple way to manipulate it, just by using a matter of using less ink of something to give you kind of a varied impression. Okay? So anyways, controlling our impression strengths using whatever existing inks to create space, depth, and the illusion of lighting. Okay, so another quick lesson on that concept there. Hope you enjoyed it.